My wife publicly humiliated me at our anniversary party, so I left quietly, and what I did next left everyone speechless and ashamed. A 34-year-old guy, and I thought my marriage was solid. Till that night. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of building what I believed was a partnership grounded in love, respect, and shared dreams. I worked long hours, but I always made time for Emily dinners, weekend trips. Even the smallest gestures, like leaving her coffee by the bed in the morning. I thought we had it all figured out, a rhythm that balanced life, love, and the little rituals that made a marriage ours. That night was our 8th anniversary. Emily had been vague all week, dropping hints about a special surprise and a night to remember. I, of course, had my own plans, a heartfelt speech, a hand-picked gift that I knew would make her eyes water, and a quiet, intimate toast with our closest friends and family. I spent hours rehearsing my words, trying to strike the perfect balance between emotional and sincere. The house smelled faintly of her favorite candles, soft jazz playing in the background, the table set perfectly. Every detail mattered to me because, in my mind, this night was about honoring us. When guests started arriving, Emily looked stunning as always, a effortless charm, that easy smile everyone seemed to adore. Friends whispered compliments, and I felt this swell of pride, thinking, this is my wife. She's incredible. I kept glancing at her, imagining her reaction to the speech. It's the way she'd laugh at my awkward jokes, the tear that would inevitably slip when I handed her the gift. But even in those seemingly perfect moments, there were subtle cracks. Small, dismissive sigh when I fumbled with the candles. A teasing comment about my outfit that carried more edge than humor. I brushed them off. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was overthinking. But a tiny, nagging part of me noticed. I didn't know it yet, but those little hints were the first shadows creeping over the night. Shadows that would soon turn our celebration upside down. The doorbell kept ringing. One guest after another, laughter spilling into the hallway as friends and family shuffled in. I could hear Emily greeting everyone with her usual, effortless charm hugs. Compliments, that easy, warm laugh that always drew people in. I tried to match her energy, shaking hands, patting backs, cracking the occasional joke. But I felt this, a strange mix of excitement and nervous anticipation, like waiting for a storm to hit. The candles flickered gently on the table, the scent of vanilla and lavender wrapping the room in a comforting haze. But I couldn't shake the flutter in my stomach. Emily floated around the living room, effortlessly commanding attention. Snippets of her conversations, compliments being thrown her way, people hanging on her every word. "You've got the magic touch, Emily," someone said, and I felt a flash of pride. She had always had that effect on people, the kind of presence that made everyone feel alive in her orbit. I thought, this is my wife. Everyone loves her. I'm lucky. But then, little things started slipping past my guard. A casual remark about my nerdy obsession with setting the table perfectly. A playful smirk when I complimented her outfit, as if she found my effort laughable. I smiled through it, chalking it up to her sense of humor. "You're always so serious about this stuff," she whispered to me as she passed. Her tone lighter than her eyes. Guests mingled, clinking glasses, laughter rising. But I began to notice whispers that I couldn't fully catch. I brushed them aside. Maybe they were talking about work, maybe about old memories, but that tiny knot in my chest grew. The music, the scent of the food, the warmth of the room, it all should have been perfect, but something under the surface felt off. Still, I tried to focus on the positive, telling myself, she's just teasing. She's excited for the night. It's all in good fun. I had no idea the subtle tension I was sensing would soon erupt, turning every smile into a knife, every laugh into a spotlight on me. The night was supposed to be perfect, and for a little while it felt that way. Glasses clinked, laughter floated through the air, and I finally relaxed into the rhythm of hosting. Emily moved effortlessly from guest to guest, her laughter infectious, her charm undeniable. Watched her, a swell of pride rising in my chest, thinking about how lucky I was. I had spent weeks planning this evening, imagining her reaction to the speech, the gift, every detail, and I had convinced myself nothing could touch this perfect moment. But then she started telling stories. Just little ones, at first harmless anecdotes about our early days together. It's the awkward dates, the times I tried and failed at cooking. Everyone laughed and I smiled along, nodding, pretending I wasn't slightly embarrassed. The room smelled of roasting chicken and warm bread, candles flickering, jazz humming softly in the background. I told myself she was just making the night fun, keeping the energy light. Then came the first crack. Emily's voice, warm and teasing. Carried across the room. Remember the time he completely forgot my birthday? I had to remind him twice.
Ass.
Laughter bubbled around her, and for a second, I froze. I forced a laugh, the kind that hides panic behind humor. I looked at her, hoping for a wink, a smile that said, "Just joking."
Hey.
But there was nothing, just the gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Subtle, polite chuckles, others more knowing, as if they were finally noticing something I hadn't. My heart thudded in my chest, a sense of dread creeping in, knotting my stomach. The room, once warm and inviting, suddenly felt tighter, more claustrophobic. I felt the heat rise to my face, my carefully rehearsed speech and gift now hovering, like fragile shields against the rising tide of humiliation. I wanted to stop it, to pull her aside, to ask her to tone it down. But something about the way she moved through the crowd, the way everyone leaned into her story, froze me. I swallowed, forcing another laugh, hoping no one noticed the tightness in my chest. Deep down, I knew this was only the beginning, a small crack that would soon widen into a chasm. It hit me faster than I could prepare for it. Emily, standing in the center of the living room, holding everyone's attention like a conductor, began, telling a story I had never agreed to share, one that wasn't even funny to anyone but her. And then, remember when he cried because I ate the last slice of cake? Her voice was playful, almost sing-song, but the look in her eyes was sharp, deliberate. Laughter erupted around the room, polite at first, then louder, a chorus of amusement that made my stomach drop. I felt it, the sudden, sharp humiliation clawing through my chest. I tried to laugh along, forcing it out like a strained cough, my hands gripping my glass so tightly I could feel the condensation biting my fingers. The candles flickered, casting jagged shadows across the walls, but the warmth of the room was gone. My cheeks burned, my ears felt hot, and the soft jazz playing in the background suddenly felt like a mocking soundtrack to the unraveling of my dignity. I opened my mouth, trying to interject. "Emily." Maybe not, but she cut me off mid-laugh, waving a hand as if I were interrupting some grand performance. "Oh, come on. Everyone loves this story. You've got to admit it's hilarious." The room laughed again, some guests leaning closer, whispering, others shooting glances at me, as if silently weighing whose side they should take. I could feel the ground slipping beneath me. All the pride, all the anticipation, all the careful planning of the night hit, collapsed in seconds. The hand-picked gift, the speech I had rehearsed endlessly, the candles, the music, they all felt meaningless against this public spectacle. I wanted to disappear, to shrink into the carpet and vanish. But instead, I just froze, nodding weakly. My voice lost somewhere in the tension thickening the air. For the first time, I saw Emily not as my partner, but as someone wielding me like a prop. Someone who had meticulously planned this, who delighted in exposing me in front of everyone. A cold, sinking realization washed over me. This wasn't a joke and this wasn't a slip. This was deliberate, and the worst part was, I had no idea what came next. I couldn't take it anymore. The laughter, the whispers, the way everyone's eyes flicked toward me as if I was some kind of sideshow, it was suffocating. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, to call her out right there, but every fiber of me told me that would only make her victory sweeter. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I walked out, quietly. Without a word, the hallway was dimly lit, the warm hum of the party fading behind me like a receding tide. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears, every step echoing on the hardwood floor. The night air hit me as I opened the front door, sharp and cold against my flushed skin. It smelled faintly of wet leaves, the kind that cling to shoes, and I breathed it in, desperate for anything grounding, anything real, anything that wasn't judgment or laughter. I didn't call anyone. I didn't look back. I just walked, my mind a cyclone of disbelief, anger, and humiliation. How could she do this? I replayed her words, her smile, the cruel sparkle in her eyes, and felt a twist of something I hadn't expected. Clarity. For the first time that night, I realized that this wasn't just a joke gone too far. This was a choice she had made, and I had the power to choose my next move. The street was empty, save for a stray cat darting across the sidewalk, its eyes glowing in the streetlight. I paused for a moment, hands shoved into my pockets, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I could hear the distant hum of laughter and music still spilling from the house. But it was like another world now, one I didn't belong to anymore. And then, almost instinctively, a plan began to form in my mind. Not loud, not dramatic, not yet, but a seed of something that would shift the night. And maybe even my life, in a way no one could have expected. I didn't know exactly what it would be. But I knew one thing. I wasn't done yet. I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying every moment of that night like a broken record. The laughter, the whispers, Emily's sharp smile, it all haunted me. But amid the shame and anger, something shifted. I began to notice patterns, little inconsistencies in her behavior that I had brushed off for years. And slowly, a realization hit me. She hadn't just humiliated me on a whim. This was calculated. She had orchestrated it. I started paying closer attention. Social media posts, casual messages to friends, snippets of phone conversations I could overhear. Everything suddenly had a different weight. There it was, subtle boasts about teaching me a lesson to her friends. Jokes she framed as harmless that were meant to make me look foolish. Every small remark from the party replayed in my mind with a new, sharper clarity. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted, was using me as entertainment. And worse, as a tool to elevate her social image. I felt a strange mix of anger and empowerment. Anger because I had been publicly humiliated, because my own wife had weaponized trust and intimacy against me. Empowerment because now I had proof, tangible and undeniable. I began documenting everything: screenshots, recordings, notes. Each piece felt like a brick in a wall I was building between myself and her control. One evening, I caught a conversation she thought I wasn't listening to. A laugh-laced confession to a friend about how she loved seeing me squirm under everyone's gaze. My stomach churned, a wave of nausea mixed with a pulse of vindication. I realized that I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't a fluke. She had been subtly undermining me for months, maybe years. And tonight I finally had the pieces I needed to prove it. I sat back. The room quiet except for the faint hum of traffic outside. For the first time since that night, I felt like I had the upper hand. I just needed to decide how to use it when, and deep down, I knew that when I did, no one would see it coming. As I dug deeper into the evidence, I realized the isolation was worse than I thought. Friends who had attended the party began reaching out not to check on me, but to ask why I seemed upset, or to laugh off Emily's stories. "Oh, come on, it was just a joke," one friend said, oblivious to the humiliation still crawling under my skin. I tried explaining carefully, diplomatically, but their eyes glazed over. I could feel the subtle judgment, the silent message. He must be overreacting. Even family wasn't immune. Emily had always had this way of wrapping people around her finger, and now they were subtly siding with her. My own parents, who had always leaned on me in subtle ways, seemed distracted enough to dismiss my pain. I found myself retreating, spending hours in my study, staring at the glow of my laptop, the evidence laid bare in files and screenshots. The house felt colder, emptier. The lingering scent of the anniversary, candles a bitter reminder of what had happened. The rock-bottom moment hit late one night. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, staring at a group chat where Emily and her friends were laughing about the night again. "He looked so clueless," one message read. I felt my chest tighten, a lump forming in my throat, my reflection in the darkened window staring back at me like a stranger. For the first time, I wondered if I had misjudged everything: my own judgment, my marriage, my self-worth, and yet, amid the despair, something else emerged: cold clarity. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't wrong. And I wasn't invisible. The isolation, the gaslighting, the social humiliation, they had sharpened my resolve. Every laugh at my expense became fuel. Every dismissive look, "it was just a joke," pushed me closer to a decision. I wasn't going to let this end with me in pieces. I didn't know exactly how yet. But I knew the moment was coming when Emily, and everyone else, would see the truth in a way that left no room for doubt. By now, my mind was constantly spinning, each thought circling back to the same conclusion. Emily had underestimated me. I wasn't going to confront her blindly, not in anger or desperation. I needed a plan, subtle, precise, and irreversible. Something that would reclaim my dignity without making me look impulsive. Every detail of the anniversary night, every smirk, every whisper, became a reference point in my mind, a blueprint for what I would do next. I started mapping it out. I knew timing would be everything. I would wait for the right moment, the moment when her arrogance and sense of untouchability were at their peak. The plan had 3 elements: truth, exposure, and control. First, gather the undeniable evidence, screenshots, messages, proof of her deliberate humiliation. Second, ensure that it reached the people who had been witnesses, those who had laughed and whispered, so they could finally see what I had endured. Third, maintain my composure, throughout calm, measured, unshakable while she crumbled under the weight of her own actions. I pictured the reactions, almost savoring them. The whispers turning to gasps, the polite laughter freezing into awkward silence. Friends shifting uneasily as the truth dawned on them. And Emily O, imagined her perfectly composed facade cracking, her eyes widening as she realized her carefully curated performance had backfired spectacularly. Yet I hesitated. A small part of me questioned whether I should go through with it. Was this revenge or justice? Was I becoming the person I despised? Calculating humiliation? But the answer came swiftly. This wasn't about cruelty. This was about reclaiming myself, about showing that manipulation and abuse, especially the subtle, social kind, would not go unchallenged. The plan was set. Though invisible for now, like a storm forming on the horizon, and I knew that when it finally hit, there would be no turning back for her, for the guests. For anyone who thought they could stand by and watch me diminish, the question that kept me awake that night: when would the right moment arrive to make everyone finally see the truth? The night I chose to act, everything felt unnervingly calm. The house was full again, friends, family, laughter, but this time I carried a quiet purpose, a controlled tension that made my pulse steady rather than frantic. I didn't rush. I didn't make noise. I let the scene unfold naturally, letting Emily take the spotlight as she always did. Her charm and confidence radiating like a spotlight she had trained on herself for years. And then, slowly, subtly, I began weaving the pieces together. A casual comment here, a carefully placed anecdote there. All backed by the screenshots and messages I had meticulously gathered. At first, no one noticed. Laughter continued. Conversation flowed, but I could feel the shift. The small micro-expressions of confusion and curiosity spreading through the crowd like ripples on water. Then it hit her. I quoted one of her jokes from that night, the exact words she had used to humiliate me in front of everyone. I showed a screenshot of her message to a friend, laughing about how he didn't see it coming.
Oh.
The room froze. Whispers erupted, eyes darting between me and Emily, mouths opening and closing as they tried to process what they were seeing. The warmth and comfort of the evening evaporated, placed by tension so thick it almost burned. Emily's face went pale, her carefully cultivated smile faltering as she stammered for words. She started, but no one was laughing anymore. Instead, there were shocked glances, the slow dawning of understanding that the charming, witty woman they had admired was, in fact, manipulative. Friends shifted uncomfortably, some outright averting their eyes, while family members looked stunned, whispering behind cupped hands. I stood quietly, letting the truth speak louder than anything I could say. The humiliation she had orchestrated for me now reflected back on her, and as I watched her composure crumble, a cold, powerful satisfaction filled me. The tables had turned. The room was finally silent enough for everyone to see who had been in control all along. even in that moment of revelation. I kept my voice calm, letting the silence and the evidence do the work. And deep down, I knew the real storm was just beginning. After the initial shock of the reveal, the room was thick with tension, eyes darting between Emily and me, unsure where to look, unsure who to believe. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself, and her faltering composure said more than any words ever could. But I knew this wasn't complete without a direct confrontation of private reckoning, one that she couldn't charm or deflect her way out of. Later, when the guests had quietly dispersed, I found her in the kitchen. The remnants of the party scattered around glasses half full, the faint scent of wine and candle wax hanging in the air. She looked at me, that practiced, flawless smile barely holding under the strain. "I didn't mean it like that," she said, voice tight, eyes darting, unsure how to salvage control. I stood there calmly, my chest steady, my hands relaxed at my sides. "No, Emily, you did mean it," I said softly but firmly, letting each word land. "You planned it. You laughed at me, in front of everyone, knowing exactly what it would do. And you expected everyone to go along with it. But I have proof, and now everyone has seen it." Lips trembled, and I could see the panic behind her eyes, the same spark of control she always relied on now, flickering and dying. "You don't understand. It was just a joke," she murmured, desperate. But the sincerity had left her tone long before. I shook my head, calm but unwavering. "No joke makes you this cruel. No joke lets you manipulate everyone around you to humiliate someone you claim to love. You wanted power over me, and I'm done giving it to you?" For the first time in years, the power dynamic had shifted completely. She was off balance, her defenses crumbling, while I felt rooted in something stronger than anger, dignity, clarity, and control. I could have walked away then, leaving her in the wreckage of her own making, and I knew she would never underestimate me again. And in that quiet confrontation, I realized just how far I had come, how completely I had reclaimed myself. The days that followed were surreal. Friends and family who had been present at the anniversary party slowly began reaching out, not with judgment, but with quiet apologies, subtle admissions that they hadn't realized what had been happening. Some admitted they had laughed at Emily's stories without understanding the manipulation behind them. The weight of months of gaslighting and humiliation began to lift, replaced by a strange, empowering clarity. I was no longer alone, and I was no longer the victim, Emily. On the other hand, retreated into silence. The charming, confident persona that had commanded every room and captivated every conversation was gone, replaced with defensiveness and shame. I noticed the subtle shift in social interactions. People who had once deferred to her now looked at me differently. Respect, which had been eroded over time, returned in small, quiet doses. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it mattered more than any public vindication. I took long walks alone, breathing in the night air, letting the city's quiet hum remind me that I existed outside of her control. I reflected on how far I had come, not just in exposing her manipulation, but in realizing my own worth, my own resilience. That night of public humiliation could have defined me, broken me, left me second-guessing my value. Instead, it became the catalyst for something stronger: self-respect, empowerment, and the understanding that I had agency over my life. I even found moments to laugh at the absurdity of it all, the surreal drama that had unfolded, and the irony that her attempts to dominate and humiliate had backfired spectacularly. The house that had once felt like a stage for her performances now felt like my own space again, reclaimed, calm, and mine. And as I moved forward, I realized the most important victory wasn't in showing her or anyone else the truth. It was in knowing that I no longer needed validation, that my dignity was intact, and that no one would ever have that power over me again. But even with the dust settling, I couldn't shake the thought: what would she do next? Life after the confrontation felt lighter, but not empty. It was a space I had carved out for myself, free from the constant undercurrent of manipulation and humiliation. I had proven, most importantly to myself, that I could stand firm even when the world seemed to side against me. Emily's reach had diminished, her charm no longer an invisible leash. For the first time in years, I felt entirely untethered and in control of my own life. I focused on the parts of myself that had been buried under doubt and shame. Career goals, hobbies, friendships I had neglected. Each choice, each step forward, was deliberate, a reclamation of time and energy that had been stolen by her games. The house, once a stage for her performances, now became my sanctuary. The scent of fresh coffee in the morning, the soft hum of the city outside my window, the quiet comfort of knowing that I was the one shaping my life, all of it felt like freedom. Some friends approached me, hesitant at first, asking how I had handled it so gracefully. I didn't feel the need to boast. I had done what I needed for myself, and the rest of Mimley, her social image, the whispers, was inconsequential. Even when she reached out, trying to reconcile or justify herself, I listened once, calmly, and decided my boundaries were unbreakable. Her attempts to manipulate or charm me had no power anymore. There was a strange satisfaction in the irony. The woman who had orchestrated public humiliation for years now had no control, no leverage, and no audience to entertain. And I, the one who had been laughed at, mocked, and undermined, had not only survived, but emerged stronger, confident, and entirely self-assured. I've learned that empowerment isn't loud. It isn't revenge in the traditional sense. It's quiet, deliberate, and unshakable. And as I walk into the next chapter of my life, I do so with dignity intact, lessons learned, and a certainty I never had before. No one, not even someone you loved, can define your worth. And finally, the past feels like exactly that, the past. Powerless, irrelevant, and completely behind me.